بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله أحمده واستعينه واستغفره وأؤمن به جل وعلا ولا أكفره وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله الصلاة بالهدى والدين الحق يظهره على الدين ولو كره المشركون. All praise and due to Allah. I praise Him, I seek His help, I seek His guidance, I ask His forgiveness. I believe in Allah and do not disbelieve in Him, and I bear witness. There is none worthy of worship except Allah. And I bear witness that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is His servant and His messenger. Allah sent to us Muhammad with deen al-haq, with the true way of life. And this true way of life, as Islam shall overcome, shall prevail over all other ways of life, although the mushriks, although those who associate partners with Allah may hate it. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. فاستخف قومه فأتعوه إنهم كان قوما فاسقين. First did he meaning Pharaoh. First did he make fools of his people, and they obeyed him, and truly they were a rebellious people. Another translation of this ayah can be, first he made dimwits out of his people, and they followed, and they certainly were a sinful people. And lastly, thus he incited his people to levity, and they obeyed. For behold, they were a people depraved. The word here, for sometimes translated as light-minded, or as one scholar said, dimwits, is khitta. Khitta means light-minded. Light meaning weak. To induce levity in anyone. What is levity? Levity means that a person cannot be serious. They have an inappropriate lack of seriousness. And so in this ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us how Pharaoh was able to get his people to follow him. Even though his people saw all of the different plagues, and they saw it with their own eyes. They saw it with their own eyes. They still followed Pharaoh. Why did they follow Pharaoh? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that Pharaoh made the minds of his people light, weak. Ibn Kathir on this verse, he says that Pharaoh made the minds of his people so weak that they were unable to understand their loss and gain, and so they followed him. This example of Pharaoh is instructive. It's instructive in terms of when we look around some of the people in the society in which we live. How did the malls become temples? How did the whole thing about worshiping celebrities begin? How did this thing start with people thinking that the most important aspect of their lives was how much stuff they can acquire? How did this happen? And as a result of the people thinking that the main purpose of their life is all about buying stuff, it weakened their minds. We're speaking to all of you here, but particularly to our beautiful Muslim youth. We want to talk about, inshallah, how the people here, how their minds were made weak. Because anytime you have people who spend thousands of dollars to look like a celebrity, their minds have been made weak. And so I want to share with you, brothers and sisters, just a little bit of history. Most of the people in this society don't know what I'm getting ready to say here. They're totally oblivious to it. I'm going to tell you about a man who in the early 1900s went to the corporations and gave the corporations a plan. And the basis of this plan was basically how to weaken the minds of the people. His name was Edward Bernays. Edward Bernays was a nephew of Sigmund Freud. And he read his uncle's treatise, his teachings on personality. Particularly the aspect of his personality where his uncle talked about the id, the part of the human being that has their passions, their desires, and their lusts. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called that part of the human personality the nafs al-amara. It's where our lust comes from, our desires, our passion. And Edward Bernays saw that particular aspect of his uncle's work, and he came up with a plan that was designed to get the people to be governed and ruled by their nafs al-amara. Let me tell you about his work. In the early 1900s, the tobacco people came to him, and they said, we want women to smoke cigarettes too, because of course it'll increase their market. Smoking cigarettes was associated with men. Women did not smoke cigarettes. It was a men's thing. And so Edward Bernays came up with a plan that in the next Thanksgiving Day parade in New York, walking down Park Avenue, he would have scores of women walking down Park Avenue with lit cigarettes in their hands. And he would advertise it as torches of freedom. Not torches of cancer sticks, torches of freedom. Freedom why? Because now women can smoke cigarettes. Women can do the things that men can do. And as a result of that one act, women in America began to smoke cigarettes. That's how effective Edward Bernays was in his work. He went to the corporation. He gave them a 3-point plan. I'm using his words. He said, number 1, impose on the people a philosophy of futility. What does futility mean? Futility means the quality of being useless, ineffectiveness, lack of purpose, lack of importance, frivolous, idle, having no useful results, unproductive. Impose on the people a philosophy of futility. Whenever you hear people today say, well, there's nothing we can do about it, that's futility. They feel useless, unimportant. And then he said, ensure that the people, the masses, you and me, ensure that the people focus on the superficial things of life, like fashionable consumption. That means buying stuff. Have them focus on the superficial things in life. Superficial, the things that are not really real. The things that are external. Have them focus on the superficial things of life, like fashionable consumption. And then lastly, make the people pursue fancy wants, invented needs. We create the need, and then get the people to focus their attention on it. So a life of futility, a life where people are merely focused on fancy wants, the superficial things, fashionable consumption, and a life in which people, you invent the need for them, and they focus their attention on that invented need. And what was used to spread this idea? TV, later on TV, radio, the media, the print media, schools, financial institutions spread this understanding. And what did it produce after a while? Of people who live a life of futility. Of people who are scrambling for the superficial things in life. Of people who focus on invented needs. What did it produce? It produced a people and a population with a weakened mind. Their minds have been made weak. It produced a population in which people became addicted to nonsense, in which people's lives had no purpose. In California, where I'm from, you have this thing called, you have a bridge, a famous bridge, most of you maybe have heard of it, called the Golden Gate Bridge. And there was a high school class that went to the bridge for a school trip, class trip. They were seniors in high school. And one of the students jumped off the bridge. Jumped off and lived. And when they retrieved his body, they said, asked him if he was depressed. He said no. Then they asked him, did your peers dare you to jump? He said no. They said, why did you jump? He said, I thought it'd be cool. That's real. I'm not making jokes and humor. That's what he said. He said, I thought it'd be cool. He thought it'd be cool to jump off the bridge. A life of futility. A life of no purpose. A life of no importance. No mission in life. He jumped. And it produces a type of life. In a couple of weeks, they'll have what they call Black Friday, in which people will go to the stores and camp out 24 hours before the store opens. Why? To get the deals. They'll be there to spend the night. They'll be there in the wee hours of the morning. Not for Qiyam. They got to get the deals. And if anybody, while they're going to get the deals, while they're going running to get them, nobody better not fall. Because if they fall, they'll be stampeded. Last year, a poor man was running into place to get the deal, and he dropped and had a heart attack. And the people الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خير المرسلين محمد النبي وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد يقول الله تعالى في القرآن الكريم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد لا تكبرون خير التكبير والآخرة خير وأبقى. You prefer the life of this world, but the hereafter is better for you. When the Prophet ﷺ, see, this is how Allah and His Messenger strengthen our mind. Man will weaken our mind. But here's how Allah and His Messenger strengthen it. That first and foremost, by letting us know that the akhirah, the hereafter, is better than this dunya. The Prophet ﷺ, when he was comparing this world with the hereafter, he said, put your finger in the ocean. How much wetness do you have on your finger? That's the example of the superiority of the akhirah to this dunya. And then the Prophet ﷺ said this, it's all about mastering this dunya, brothers and sisters, and that's all we're talking about. Don't let this dunya master you. Because once this dunya masters you, then you become a slave to this dunya. A slave to it. A slave to something that doesn't last. A slave to something that's fleeting. The Prophet ﷺ, Zayd ibn Thabit, anhu, he related that the Prophet ﷺ said this, whose ever main concern becomes the akhirah, becomes the hereafter. Whose ever main concern becomes the hereafter, Allah will make things well for him in this world. And will make richness dwell in his heart. What is that richness? Content. They're contented. And the dunya will come to him despite its unwillingness. And the dunya will come to him despite its unwillingness. When you master the dunya. And whoever main concern becomes this dunya, Allah will scatter his affairs and will place poverty before his eyes, and also the dunya will not come to him except what was written for him. Mastering the dunya. Because once we master the dunya, brothers and sisters, and we're not a slave of it. To be a slave of the dunya means that we only see the outer things in life. To be a slave of the dunya means that we have a material perspective. Everything is based on materialism. That's it, that's all. Materiality. To be a slave of the dunya means that we begin to love and begin to worship the pleasure principle. Hedonism. You know, if it feels good, do it. You know, that's that hedonism thing. That's where the YOLOs and the you only live once is, and we're young, wild, and free. That's where all that comes from. It comes from that mentality. That their goal to weaken your mind, their goal to weaken our minds, was to get us to become dominated by our nafs al-amara. Become dominated by your animal self. Become dominated by that evil self. Become dominated by that passionate self. And once you become dominated by that passionate self, that evil self, then you fall prey to deception. But Allah and His Messenger strengthens our mind by enabling us to see the dunya for what it actually is. Remember the movie The Matrix? And at the end of the first movie, he mastered the Matrix, that false world. He mastered it how? He saw the Matrix as what it actually is. And as a result of him seeing the Matrix as what it actually is, he was able to master it. When we understand what Allah and His Messenger tells us about the nature of this world, we're able to master it. Not retreat from it. Not retreat. But while we're active in it, we're able to master it. And mastering this dunya means that we're using this dunya for our akhirah. This dunya is not using us for the hellfire. We're using this dunya for our akhirah. That's mastering it. Mastering the dunya means that our life has meaning. Our life is meaningful. Our life has a purpose. We know that this thing doesn't last long. How can you choose something that's temporary for something that's forever? How can something temporary be more important than something that's forever? How can this temporary world be something that's more of our focus than the hereafter? Allah, sallallahu His messenger, teaches us to master this dunya by seeing this dunya for what it actually is. So while we are interacting with it, and this is important, brothers and sisters, because in this time, we all going through stuff. Every household is going through things. Money problems, bill problems, family problems, health problems. We're all being tested. We're all being tested. Not just Muslims, non-Muslims as well. That's what time it is. And when we're able to see this dunya for what it actually is, then we're able to master this dunya, particularly in this critical time that we are in right now. So when that waswas comes to us, the scholars talk about the waswas. I'll come to my close. When the scholars talk about the waswas, they talk about 5 particular things that the waswas brings. Illusions. Having illusions to the point where, we want to make it big, or we want to, how when people, they talk about, let's go to Atlantic City, maybe we'll make some money. Illusions, just illusions of indulgences, or indulgence in illusions. They said that when the waswas comes, it brings doubt. When the waswas comes, it brings the harboring of evil thoughts. When the waswas comes, they said it brings sadness. We get sad. And when the waswas comes, we get worried about everything. That's when the dunya is taking its toll on us. So when we keep things in perspective, brothers and sisters, it is all about the akhirah. It is all about the akhirah. Then we will know that when we deal with this dunya, we will master it. Mastering the dunya means doing dawah, doing Allah's work. Mastering the dunya means we fulfill our requirements of commanding the right and forbidding the wrong. Mastering the dunya means that we live a life of trying to establish Islamic community. That's mastering the dunya. It's the only way to live. It's the only way to live. And so my respected brothers and sisters, we have to be careful of these things. Because even though we are Muslims, we can be influenced by the trends. And as Muslims, we can end up living our lives that are not needed, lives that are not important. Muslims, we can get caught up in a situation where we're living a materialistic life, a life based on deception, and next thing you know, we'll start worshiping those celebrities, looking at the malls and the masjids, and realize that we've lost. And so inshallah, my respected brothers and sisters, this weekend, as we talk to our youth, our beautiful Muslim youth, we need to deal with these issues. We need to have some conversations, some real talk about these issues and what's taking place and how our young people are being affected by it. And inshallah, we hope and pray that as parents, that you will participate and you will let your youth participate as well. Oh Allah, we seek their refuge from anxieties and grief. We seek their refuge from lack of strength and laziness. We seek their refuge from stinginess and cowardliness. We seek their refuge from being overpowered by debt and the oppression of men. Oh Allah, satisfy us with that which is lawful. Keep us away from that which is unlawful, and with thy grace, free us of all wants of that which is beside thee. So Allah, guide us to the best of morals. Let them guide to the best of morals. And turn us away from the evil and indecent morals. And let us turn away from the evil and indecent morals.